Hi, my name's Tina. I was born in Sydney, Australia. Came from a family of four, my parents, and I have a sister. My parents were great at showing love through acts of service, but there was never any really strong emotional connection. They weren't believers, but they did drop us off to church every Sunday. In second grade, I actually gave my life to the Lord. I remember just falling in love with Jesus, and I would talk to him when I was lonely. I loved to read the Bible. My teenage years kind of put God on the back burner. At 24, my sister invited me to a Christian conference where I realized that I was not living for the Lord, and I gave my life back to him, really surrendered to his lordship. Started going to church and getting involved in an adult youth group. Fast forward 2 years, a girlfriend of mine at work invited me to go to Hawaii with her, which I went, and on the first night that we arrived, was in a little bar, and Michael walked in. And right as he walked in the door, I laughed at some kind of joke and our eyes met, and there was an instant connection. We ended up going out after that and sitting in a little breakfast place and talking till 4 a.m. and realized that there was something there. We invited Michael to church, and he came, and that's when he surrendered his life back to the Lord. And it was just a really powerful time in both of our lives. So I go back to Australia. I decide to quit my job and go back to Hawaii to see what would happen with Michael. 3 months later, we're engaged to be married. We get married in Australia, and then we get transferred to Guam, where we lived for 3 years. After the military, we move here to West Palm Beach, and we start a family. I was just so wrapped up in being a mom and loving through acts of service, which is what my parents had demonstrated from me, that I started neglecting Michael. I think the physical side of our relationship started to suffer because I was just so focused on being a mom. So Michael, who has a very broken background and really needed that physical intimacy, started going outside of our marriage to have those needs met. He felt like he could just lead a double life. He could be there for his family, but he could take care of anything else outside of that. And I was totally unaware of that. So in my mind, we had a great life. We have 2 more children. About 10 years into our marriage, Michael confesses to me that he has been having affairs. I was devastated, but he was such a great husband, he was such a great father, that I was willing to work with him. And so he decided to go to Celebrate Recovery. We actually both went to that together. He joined like an accountability group. His brokenness was pretty deep. It didn't stick. In 2010, Michael goes to Alabama with his work with Bell South, and he's going to be there for 3 months. While he was there, obviously partying and going out, he gets introduced to the drug meth. And that was the life-changing point, I think, in our relationship. He came back from Alabama and things were fine. He tells me later that he wasn't really addicted at that point, but things started to change. He started to go out more, he started to gamble, and the gambling got really bad. Over a period of years, we actually ended up losing our home to foreclosure. His behavior started becoming more erratic. He ended up having to retire early out of Bell South because he wasn't being able to hold down a job. I knew something was wrong, but he was so good at talking his way out of things and explaining things away. I had no idea that he was on drugs. Around 2016, things were pretty bad, and Christmas time, I remember hearing a still small voice say to me, "Release him." I heard that voice, but then I started questioning, was it really God? And there was honestly some fears inside of me, because my father, when I was in my early 20s, had made some really bad financial decisions. My parents lost their home. My dad ended up spiraling out of control, drinking, ended up on the streets, and actually died in a halfway house. And so releasing Michael to go out onto the streets was very scary for me. So I fought with God for about 4 years. But eventually I did realize that I needed to obey, so I went on a 40-day fast. I really sought God and said, "God, what do I do? Things are out of control. I can't control it. What do I do?" And he showed me that I was to ask him to move out, which I did. Come to find out that when Michael moved out of home, he started selling drugs. Now at this point, I still didn't even know he was on drugs. He was able to hide it really well. And he started selling drugs, and in God's providence, he was arrested in August of 2019. So Michael was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He said that when those prison doors slammed behind him and he was in his cell all alone, he hit his knees and he just cried out to God and he said, "God, how did I get here?" And he said, "God, if you're real, reveal yourself to him." He was given a Bible, and he spent the next 2.5 years just getting to know God, studying His Word, and really repenting and going through his own healing journey. In August of 2022, Michael gets out. He was a changed man. I was seeing the fulfillment of all my prayers, and he came back here to church to bow down. He was embraced by everybody here, welcomed with open arms. Our children embraced him with open arms, and we just began a whole new chapter of our family. You know, God doesn't promise us an easy life, but He does promise that He'll be with us every step of the way, and He never failed in that promise for me. He was always there. I made a covenant before an altar when we got married that I was going to commit myself to Michael for better or for worse, richer or poorer, and in sickness and in health until death do us part. And I took that covenant really seriously, and I knew that God did too. And I knew that I could stand on the promises of God's Word and hold God accountable to those promises. I always had hope that God would come through. Was it hard? Yes, but God always met me at every point of my need, surrounded me with community. He was always there for me. We all know the love verse in 1 Corinthians, but it says that love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Love always hopes, love always perseveres, and love always forgives. And so I just kept standing on that. I kept hearing from God mercy over judgment, and that's what I did. I started declaring God's word over Michael's life, standing on God's word, speaking God's word over him, like he will live and not die and declare the works of the Lord, verses like that. And I just kept standing on those promises, and I watched that play out in Michael's life. I saw God move in him, change him, transform him, and now we get to live a life and serve the Lord together.